There's a box in the corner of their room. Maybe it's under the bed. Maybe it's in the back of a closet they haven't opened in 3 years. Inside it, old receipts, a birthday card from someone they don't even talk to anymore, a broken watch, a ticket stub from a concert they barely remember. And they know it's there. They've thought about clearing it out. Maybe they've even started once or twice. But something stops them every single time. If that sounds familiar, not as a problem, just as a pattern, what you're about to hear might explain something you felt but never quite been able to name. Because people who can't throw things away aren't just disorganized. They're not lazy, and they're definitely not broken. They just carry the world differently than most people. 1. They have an unusually strong relationship with memory. Most people see an old object and think about whether it's still useful. People who struggle to let go see an old object and feel something. The object isn't just a thing, it's a timestamp. It's proof that something happened, that a moment was real, that a version of themselves existed. There's a psychology term for this: object memory attachment, the idea that physical items become anchors for emotional experiences. For most people, memories live comfortably in the mind. For others, they need somewhere to live outside the body too. That birthday card from someone they don't talk to anymore, it's not about the person, it's about who they were when they received it. The broken watch isn't about time, it's about a specific chapter of their life they're not ready to fully close. This isn't sentimentality in the casual sense. It's a deeply embedded belief, often unconscious, that if you throw the object away, you lose access to the feeling, that a piece of the past disappears with it. And here's something worth sitting with. That's not irrational. For people who've experienced loss of relationships, loss of identity, loss of a version of life they loved, holding on to physical things is one of the only forms of preservation that actually feels real. The object says, "This happened. I was there. It mattered." Letting it go feels less like decluttering and more like erasure. 2. They have a deep sensitivity to waste, rooted in something older. This one goes further back than people usually expect. Many people who struggle to discard things grew up in environments where resources were uncertain. Maybe money was tight. Maybe things were taken away unexpectedly. Maybe the message they absorbed, spoken or not, was that you don't waste, that throwing something away when it might still have value is irresponsible, careless, wrong. Even if that environment is long gone, the nervous system remembers. The body learned a rule early: hold on because you don't know what's coming. And that rule doesn't just apply to objects. It often applies to relationships, opportunities, emotions, anything that once had value. The logic is the same. If it was useful once, it might be useful again. If it meant something once, it might mean something again. Getting rid of it feels like gambling with a resource you can't afford to lose. This isn't just a habit. It's a survival pattern wearing the costume of a personality trait. What's interesting is how invisible this can be to the person living it. They don't experience it as fear. They experience it as practicality, as being careful, as knowing the value of things. The emotional origin has long since been buried under a completely logical-sounding explanation. But underneath that logic, there's usually a younger version of them who learned that abundance was never guaranteed and built a whole internal system around making sure nothing slipped through their hands. 3. They often struggle with finality. And here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't just about objects. People who can't throw things away often have the same relationship with endings of all kinds. They stay in friendships that have clearly run their course. They keep jobs they've outgrown. They hold on to feelings about people long after the relationship is over, not because they want to, but because letting go feels like a kind of small death, a closing of something that can never be reopened. Psychologists sometimes call this intolerance of finality, a difficulty accepting that some things are simply over, that a door, once closed, doesn't have to be kept ajar just in case. For these people, the act of discarding is symbolically loaded. Throwing away an object isn't just tidying a space, it's making a decision that cannot be undone. And for someone who deeply fears permanent loss, who perhaps has experienced it in painful ways, irreversibility itself is the threat. The object in the box isn't really the point. The box is a way of keeping options open, of saying, I haven't decided yet. This isn't over. I'm not ready to call it done. There's something almost quietly brave about that, if you think about it. In a world that pressures everyone to move on quickly, to declutter aggressively, to let go and keep going, these people are quietly insisting that some things deserve more time, more reverence, more space. That's not dysfunction. That's a different relationship with time itself. 4. They tend to be deeply empathetic, and they extend that empathy to objects. This sounds unusual, but follow this for a moment. People with high empathy don't just feel deeply for other people. They feel for things. They anthropomorphize unconsciously. They sense the feelings of objects in a way that most people simply don't register. The stuffed animal from childhood feels like it would be sad to be thrown away. The mug someone gave them feels like it would be a betrayal to discard. The old jacket still hanging in the closet, it feels wrong to donate it, even though they haven't worn it in 4 years. This sounds like magical thinking, but it's actually evidence of an extraordinarily developed empathic nervous system, one that projects meaning and emotional weight onto everything in its environment. And this trait doesn't stay contained to objects. These are usually the people who remember birthdays without being reminded, who notice when someone in the room has gone quiet, who feel the mood of a space the moment they walk in, who carry other people's pain long after others have moved on. The relationship with objects is a mirror of the relationship with people. Deep, loyal, reluctant to let go, and wired to believe that everything deserves to be treated as though it matters. That's not clutter. That's a form of devotion. 5. Their identity is quietly woven into their possessions. This is the deepest layer. For most people, identity lives internally. It's a sense of self that travels with them, regardless of what surrounds them. But for people who struggle to let go, identity is also partially external. It lives in the objects around them. The things they own are not separate from who they are. They're evidence of who they've been. Psychologists refer to this as the extended self, the idea that people incorporate objects into their sense of identity. Their possessions become a kind of autobiography, a physical record of every chapter, every relationship, every version of themselves they've ever been. When someone tells them to throw something away, it doesn't feel like a practical suggestion. It feels like being asked to delete a part of their own story. And that's why organizing advice almost never lands for these people. You can't solve this with a bin and a checklist, because the real question isn't, do you still need this? The real question, the one they're silently asking themselves, is, if I let this go, do I still remember who I was when it mattered? And underneath that question is something even quieter. Am I allowed to let go of something that once meant everything to me? What all 5 of these traits share, the memory anchoring, the scarcity wiring, the intolerance of finality, the empathy extended to objects, the externalized identity, is that they're not random. They're not personality flaws or organizational failures. They're a particular way of being in the world. A way that says things have weight, moments deserve to be kept, nothing that mattered should disappear without acknowledgement. That's a kind of consciousness most people never develop. The person who can't throw anything away isn't holding on to junk. They're holding on to a life they took seriously, every single piece of it. Once you see it that way, it stops looking like a problem. It starts looking like a very specific, very human kind of care. And that awareness alone of where the pattern comes from, what it protects, what it says about the person carrying it, changes everything about how you see it. It was never random. It was always a pattern.